Hey everybody, I decided to kind of make an extra video this week, and there are several reasons for this. First, I just got a new webcam, which I'm using right now, which I just wanted to play with some more. Second, of course, I just really like to look at myself on the monitor. There I am. Not bad. And third, there were two stories that would easily have had a place in the most recent Five Stupid Things video, the current events version, the red version that goes up on Monday, but I just didn't hear about them in time, or I didn't have time to formulate a take on them. And the next one of those isn't until 2 weeks, and who knows what will happen between now and then. So I just wanted to talk about these two additional stories now, if you don't mind. We'll call it maybe two extra stupid things, two bonus stupid things. The first one is the biker rally slash gun rally slash Draw Muhammad event that took place a couple of days ago at the Islamic Community Center of Phoenix, a mosque in Phoenix, where a group of people decided to stage a protest that they said was in response to the recent shooting, in response to a Draw Muhammad contest in Texas. And this was called a freedom of speech rally. And as a part of this freedom of speech rally, one of the groups involved in it encouraged people who came to the rally to exercise their Second Amendment rights, which meant let's all go to the mosque with our guns and see what happens. This doesn't strike me as a particularly mature or productive response to a horrible shooting. Maybe that's just me. But it got me thinking about a couple of different things. And one of the main things that got me to think about was how my own views have changed over the last few years on the idea of drawing Muhammad. One thing has not changed for me, and that is I believe that if you want to draw Muhammad, you're completely within your rights to do so, and anyone who would threaten you with violence or harm you with violence as a result of you drawing Muhammad is not a person to be respected and is not a person whose demands should be listened to. I firmly, strongly, in the most certain terms of which I am capable of expressing myself, reject and denounce the notion of religions forcing other people to live by their rules, or people in religious groups claiming that their beliefs, their convictions give them the right to impose those convictions on other people, particularly through threat of violence, but also through intimidation or through the law, as many Christians attempt to do in this country. I just completely reject that. But I don't know how productive drawing Muhammad is. I've done it myself. If you look on some of the older videos at my channel, there are videos where I draw Muhammad and make kind of a funny bit out of it. But I just don't think that's worth doing anymore. I think it should be allowed to be done. Those of you who watch this and you disagree with me and you think it is a really important thing to do, I think you should be allowed to do it. I don't think you should be threatened or intimidated or harmed as a result of doing it. But I just don't think it's a very productive thing to do. Because so often when people draw Muhammad or they stage some other kind of protest against what they consider to be, tyranny of the Muslims or Muslim extremism, it just turns into a really embarrassing display of hatred and bigotry and racism. Like this rally in Phoenix. These people weren't trying to make a freedom of speech statement. They were doing a show of force. They picked a target that they associated with an enemy, with a Muslim community that almost certainly had done them no harm. And they decided to swagger around with their guns on display and show those Muslims who was boss. And it's disgusting. And I don't see what it's supposed to accomplish other than intimidating and attempting to cow that Muslim community into fear and submission to the white people or the Christians or the non-Muslims, whatever the case may be. It's disgusting. And too often these Draw Muhammad demonstrations have that kind of a vibe. They're not all that overtly threatening, but there's a sense that it's not so much about asserting your right to freedom of speech or freedom of expression. It's not so much about pushing back against and encroaching religious authority as it is about poking people in the eye. And in the United States, Muslims are not a threatening authoritarian majority that are trying to impose their will on other people. Muslims are a despised minority in this country. And that's very unfortunate that they are seen that way and treated that way. They are a very vulnerable, hated group by a lot of people, a marginalized group. And for people in the United States to stage these kinds of demonstrations as though they're pushing back against some great threat, as though ISIS were knocking on their doors there in Phoenix, it's just disgusting. And it doesn't speak to me of the triumph of the human spirit and the importance of freedom of expression and liberty. It speaks to me of bullying and ethnocentrism and xenophobia and bigotry and racism. And I think it's a hideous, horrible thing. And I think it's terrible that people are acting in the way that these people did, gathering outside that mosque, and then they're trying to wrap themselves in the cloak of the First Amendment and also the Second Amendment and make it about a demonstration, a protest for freedom. It's absolutely revolting to me. They should all be ashamed of themselves, but I don't think they are capable of shame. Speaking of things that people should be ashamed of, the next story is something that Ashley told me about yesterday, or maybe 2 days ago, but regardless, I didn't have time to include it in the 5 Stupid Things video. And it's this story from Connecticut about an English teacher who was fired, maybe not technically fired, but pressured to resign, lost his job as a result of reading an Allen Ginsberg poem in his class. Now, the Allen Ginsberg poem that he read is titled Please Master, and if you haven't read it, or if it's been a long time since you read it and you would like to refresh your memory, the poem is actually available for free to read online, and I'll give you a link to it in the description of this video, and I'll put it on the screen as well. It's available for free to read on the site hellopoetry.com, and again, it's by Allen Ginsberg. It's called Please Master, and it is an account of a sexual encounter between two gay men. And I suppose it is rather graphic. It's a piece of erotica. Maybe some people would consider it pornographic. But here's the important thing to remember about this story. No matter how you feel about the poem itself, whether the poem offends your sensibilities or whether you don't think there's anything wrong with it at all, the poem was brought into class by a student who wanted to discuss the poem in class with his teacher and with his classmates. And this was a class of high school seniors, so we're talking 17 and 18-year-olds, and it was an AP English course for which many of the students were earning college credit. So this was essentially a college-level English course for seniors in high school. These were not children who were exposed to some awful piece of pornography, some horribly inappropriate thing that would warp their young minds. These are serious English students who are taking a college-level course. And it seems to me very condescending, very insulting to their intelligence. And I'm not saying that none of those students were offended by it. Maybe there were some students in the class who were offended by the poem. All I'm saying is they can handle it. You know, when you get to college, you will probably be reading things that you won't like, either because you just don't like it, you don't think it's a very good piece, or because it offends your sensibilities, whatever your sensibilities may be. We read some Ginsberg when I was in college. I actually liked all of it. We didn't read Please Master, but I've read Please Master now in preparation for this video. I don't see anything wrong with it. I wasn't struck by its brilliance or anything, but I certainly wasn't offended by it. I certainly didn't think it was some hateful, awful thing that should be hidden away from people. There's nothing wrong with it at all. And the overreaction of school officials and of prudish administrators and parents to this is just appalling to me. This teacher was an award-winning teacher, and he was a teacher who had been working for almost 20 years and was apparently very well respected by his colleagues, by his students, by his community, and now he is out of his job because one of his students handed him a poem written by a major, respected, important 20th century American poet and said, please, can we read this in class and talk about it? And the teacher said, yes, let's do that, because it's an AP English course. Of course we can do that. And now he doesn't have his job. It's disgusting. It really makes me hang my head. It makes me ashamed to be here. I mean, it really does drive me crazy when I hear stories like this. This kind of the article I'm reading about it now on the website Alternet, and I'll link to that as well in the description for this video. Describes it as moral panic. All the parents, the administrators, they were in moral panic. The school officials who pressured him to leave his job wrote in his disciplinary letter that by reading the poem, he showed egregiously poor professional judgment, and he violated the trust that was placed in him by the Board of Education, and he brought discredit to the public school system. By reading an Allen Ginsberg poem to his senior English students who were earning college credit, many of whom, perhaps even most or all of whom, are going on to college in the fall and will be taking classes much like this and more advanced than this and dealing with more difficult material than this. He has shamed his public. He has violated the trust of the Board of Education. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And, you know, it's at least comforting to know that he has not been universally condemned in his community. A lot of people in the community have felt and expressed that the school board made a incredibly wrong decision by forcing him out. In this article, it says one of his former students describes what he calls a tonal change in the community that reminds him of Mrs. Flanders from The Simpsons, and won't someone please think of the children? This blind, unfocused hysteria about something, and we don't know what it is or why it's bad necessarily, at least not in any way we can articulate, but it's going to hurt the kids, so we've got to get it out of here. We've got to get it out of here. Play the kid card. It's just really, really too bad. So anyway, those are my two additional stupid things for this week. This really embarrassing, hateful, xenophobic nonsense about bikers gathering outside a mosque in Phoenix to protest a shooting a month ago in Texas, and then this teacher losing his job for doing his job. I guess the hardest part is picking two. Does that work here? Apparently not. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.